The next season of The Bad Batch, The Bad Batch Season 3, was just teased in a big way, but first things first. So yesterday we broke down episode 5 of The Mandalorian Season 3, and fans were generally very pleased with some of the surprises therein. We were left with a sense of happiness, excitement, and joy. I don't want to spoil it though, go and check out my full episode breakdown for that, but when it comes to The Bad Batch Season 2, the double episode finale, it was much more intense, heartbreaking, and climactic. I've got to say, I loved what we got for the last 2 episodes, but they definitely broke my heart. Is Tech really dead? Until we get confirmation that somehow he survived and Hemlock lied, which wouldn't be too surprising by the way, I'm gonna say yes. A meaningful sacrifice that fans didn't expect, but one that's gonna change the lives of Omega, Wrecker, Hunter, and Echo forever. Here we were thinking that Plan 99 was going to be an Imperial plot to take out the Bad Batch, but it ended up being Tech sacrificing himself in a plan he had in mind for years. It makes you think of the Clone 99, who himself made a life-ending sacrifice, and they called Clone Force 99 after him. Losing Tech was enormous. He was such a pivotal member of the group, always helping with, well, the techie stuff, you know what I mean, strategizing, saving the day, preparing rescues, pickups, and so on. And above all else, we really started to get to know a more human side to him this season. He got so much screen time and focus. I mean, I can still hear the crowd chanting his name after the riot race on Safatoma. My heart also breaks for Fee Genoa when she finds out. She was really into him, even giving him the name Brown Eyes. Many fans were hoping those two would get together, well not anymore. As Tech even told us earlier in the season, despite his outward demeanour, and even if he didn't express things in the same way as his brothers and sister, he still felt all the same emotions inside. Everything they've been through. Now it's very difficult to not turn this review into a Tech appreciation video, because it genuinely affected me deeply when he died. I've always loved him, don't get me wrong, but I didn't realise how much I cared about his character in the show until I was full on bawling my eyes out from his sacrifice. And the way he said, "When have we ever followed orders," absolutely broke me. Great emotional writing, and the music didn't help either, and if Jennifer Corbett's saying was to have us in tears, she definitely succeeded. Omega's disbelief and anguish got me as well. She's been through way too much this season, and Tech's death in a big way was the final straw for the remaining members. Hunter already spoke to Wrecker and they agreed they were no longer going to live lives of soldiers, they were going to retire on Pabu and start over. But just as Omega agreed, it turns out they were betrayed by Sid. She turned them in, which many fans predicted right from the start. If you think back to the Safatoma episode, Melegi did warn us that Sid is bad news. She always does this kind of thing, and it's not a very good advert for Trandoshans, who already have a very dodgy reputation in the galaxy far, far away. Not to mention this season, they've been portrayed in a very bad light. Not surprising though, and in this instance, Sid wanted the money, but the Empire is now an all-man tell, so any sort of secrecy she was trying to keep is now compromised. Dr. Hemlock got what he wanted, Omega. And how about that twist at the end, that Emery Carr is a clone? I knew that accent wasn't a coincidence. She tells Omega she's her sister. Some crazy stuff to finish on. So much for Wrecker and Hunter taking a break. They want to bring Omega home, and given the trajectory of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an even darker twist coming, and Wrecker and Hunter never get to retire, and somehow die in their search later on. But the dark stuff aside, let's focus on some of the coolest aspects of the double episode finale. The summit itself between some of the highest ranking Imperials was on Eriadu, a planet referenced in some of the time material to Rogue One, the Tarkin novel and Catalyst by James Luceno. The Tarkin family had a compound there, and it was where some of the most secretive meetings took place. Now there are several connections to Rogue One and Andor in these 2 episodes. For one thing, some of the other Imperials at the meeting. Apart from Hemlock and Tarkin, we see Hurst Ramodi, who first appeared in A New Hope, but also featured in Rogue One. He was involved in the pacification of the Western Reaches, but was also brought out of retirement to take part in Project Stardust, the Death Star, which is also name-dropped in this episode, in reference to Krennic, and he appears for the first time in animation. He looked amazing, and at this time he was Commander Krennic, but was still voiced by Ben Mendelsohn, and I really think he's going to appear in Andor Season 2. That post-credit scene at the end of episode 12, Rick's Road, was certainly foreshadowing. Anything relating to the Death Star pre-Rogue One signifies Krennic. Each of these Imperials at the summit represents a different faction of the Empire. Hemlock had the Advanced Science Division, and strongly implies his cloning work relates to Palpatine's contingency later in the timeline. Even at this very early stage, Palpatine was obsessed with immortality. He'd been preparing for decades. Hemlock says his work will benefit the Emperor, but they do leave a lot of what Hemlock is up to ambiguous. Despite Tarkin telling him there are worries in the Senate from the likes of Eriadu concerning the rights of clones, Hemlock, the monster that he is, views them as mere property, so he doesn't care. Mount Tantiss and what goes on there is a secret known to only a handful within the Empire. The other Imperial present at the meeting was Barton Coburn, Admiral of the Navy who served under Plo Koon during the Republic. We saw him in the Clone Wars. Now, one Imperial who really caught my attention was Lieutenant Mailer, who sounded like he had a German accent. Now, this might be a stretch, but imagine if he ends up being the client from The Mandalorian Season 1, an Imperial fanatic who somehow survives and later on works with Moff Gideon to bring back Palpatine. Now moving on, one thing I loved in this episode was the snowy transport sequences, reminiscent of the train heist in Solo. Another massive connection to Rogue One that I didn't expect was Saw Gerrera, one of my all-time favourite characters. He was there to level the base and basically destroy everyone in it. We're seeing more of his violent tendencies on display at this early stage. If you've played Fallen Order or seen Rogue One or the Andor show, or even the episodes of the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch Season 1 he features in, maybe even if you read Rebel Rising, then you know he is ideologically driven and has no compassion or regard for the humanity of his enemies. He will take major risks, put others in harm's way, and literally do anything he can if it means achieving his aim and putting a stick in the eye of the Empire. What I'm saying is he was brutal, and while at first I was pleased to see him, it turns out he was the reason for Tech's death. The explosion caused the power to go out, and therefore the whole incident where Tech tried to get the rail moving again. Now, despite this episode being really tragic, a lot was teased for Season 3, which is probably going to be announced on April 10th during the Bad Batch panel at Star Wars Celebration, which also just so happens to be my birthday, so fingers crossed. The Season 2 ending that we just got was a cliffhanger. Omega is now on Wayland at Mount Tantiss. It seems as though the Death Trooper program, or whatever it is Crosshair is being used for, is going to come into full swing in Season 3. We're going to see the next stage of the Stormtrooper program, which involves using clones for experimental units. We saw lots of clone tanks, abominations, as well as Crosshair and other clones on operating tables. It's going to get very dark. I reckon a big portion of Season 3 is going to be Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, and possibly Rex, maybe some other clones they've picked up, searching for Omega's location on Mount Tantiss, which they were unable to find due to their failed mission, but also highly classified and encrypted Imperial security. Now, as someone pointed out, maybe the title of the show The Bad Batch now has a double meaning, referring to both Clone Force 99 but also the batch of clones on Wayland, a bad batch. I think Omega is going to go through a bit of an identity crisis, because on top of struggling with the fact that she's a clone, she now knows that she wasn't the only female Django clone made to be a medical assistant, and now going forward, as for her purpose, she's just a bargaining tool for Nala Se. Hemlock is asking for the impossible on behalf of Palpatine, and while a lot of us assumed he wanted Omega for her DNA, I'm guessing they don't, at least not for the time being. They already have Crosshair, who right now is probably mentally gone. He's lost his autonomy. In many ways, it's an unfair and emotional way to end the season, because now we have to wait a year or longer for the next one. But I suspect the Bad Batch is going to be 4 seasons in total, like Star Wars Rebels. Tarkin mentioned worries of a clone uprising, and I kind of think that's going to happen, and I don't think the tragedy has come to an end. There's more of it to come. Echo made it out alive this season, but I don't think that's going to last. But 2 amazing episodes. Share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you always.